All right, so this section of lecture notes is about cell growth and division. So we, in class, have talked about the structure of DNA, some basic terminology dealing with chromosomes and genes and things like that. And so if you are listening to this and watching this prior to the first day of school after the winter holidays, then you've got some content that you're going to get in class tomorrow. So that being said, we're going to be talking about why cells grow and divide here. There's two main reasons. Basically, in a cell, there's a set amount of DNA. So as the cell grows, that set amount of DNA cannot control extra cell functions if the cell gets too large. So it's got to divide, okay, so that the cell functions can be controlled by that set amount of DNA. And then the second thing deals with transport. So we're going to go back to last semester when we were talking about osmosis and diffusion and materials moving across membranes as far as tying that to this content. So as cells grow, transportation of materials across the membrane becomes really difficult. Basically, large cells require additional nutrients in order to function properly, and large cells are going to create more waste. So in the grand scheme of things, if you kind of consider the picture that's on the next slide, that's what we're going to talk about in just a minute. I'm not going to slide that up quite yet. But basically what we see here on that double asterisk, and that we're going to do a lab dealing with this, is that as a cell's size increases, the volume is going to increase much faster than the surface area. So this is going to decrease the surface area to volume ratio. And we've already talked about surface area several times this year. We talked about it at the beginning of the year when we took your carrot and celery and grape and cut it up and put it in the dehydrator, and we looked at percent mass change to determine how much water was in those three foods or pieces of plants, however we want to think about that. So we said at that time that the smaller pieces had larger surface area. We looked at this a little bit in the cell structure and function activity where you moved around the room right before we went for Thanksgiving that we never really talked about a ton because of us coming back to staggered. But there was a picture of a capillary bed there. They have high surface area. And so rapid exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen, whether we're talking about in the lungs or in our tissues, is going to happen across those membranes. And so then we're going to do this lab to really demonstrate that a little bit more. And I feel like we've talked about surface area and volume another time. All right, so this is just a quick picture showing on the left, you've got a large cell and then a whole bunch of small cells that are the same size collectively as the large cell on the left. But if we were to say that for this particular cell that nutrients needed to get from outside to the center or waste needed to get from the center to the outside, transportation is going to just take a whole lot longer, okay, in the grand scheme of things, to get from point A to point B, or if we want to say from point B out to point A. So the cell may starve, okay, it may not get the nutrients that it needs, may not get the oxygen that it needs, and then it may be poisoned by the buildup of waste if the waste can't get out fast enough. So the bigger a cell gets, transportation gets harder. Where if we look over here on all these small cells, and if we had to say that nutrients needed to go from the outside to the center or waste from the center to the outside, then those materials are going to be able to move much more quickly from where they to where they need to get, okay, in order to keep the cell healthy, getting new nutrients, or in order to get rid of waste. That's going to happen really fast, okay, with a large surface area to volume ratio. So cells are going to divide in order to keep that ratio high. And then we see lots of structures in the body of various types of organisms where we have high surface area to volume ratio. And capillary beds are a great example of that. You've got them all over your body for you to deliver oxygen to the cells so that they can carry out cellular respiration and to pick up carbon dioxide as a waste product. And gas exchange has got to happen fast in order to generate ATP, okay? In order to carry out daily activities, we need that oxygen to burn sugars, and then also we need to get rid of waste really quickly because it can build up. And then when we talk about like glucose and other molecules that just have to move rapidly in and out of our cells, they're going to do that in capillary beds, okay? When your cells need sugar, it's got to be able to cross through a protein via facilitated diffusion, go from high to low concentration to give your cells the fuel that they need in order for you to carry out respiration and make ATP. There's some other things besides size that can determine the rate of diffusion, and that's just kind of asked of you here. So just for a real quick explanation of just a couple things. Temperature of the environment. So if we were doing a diffusion lab, temperature can play a role. Shape of the cell. I had something else and I just forgot what I was thinking of. But hang on. Sorry, I had to stop and think for a second. The steepness of the concentration gradient. So if you've got a really high concentration of a solute, let's say, and it needs to diffuse down its concentration gradient, then that's going to determine the rate of diffusion. If we're talking about water moving via osmosis, then the steepness of that gradient, where there's way more free water compared to very little free water, then that's going to dictate how rapidly osmosis is going to occur. So there are other factors besides the size of a cell that are going to dictate the rate of diffusion, but we're going to focus on size for this unit because this unit is about cell division. Let me know if you have any questions.